Try to roofie a girl at a party? 2 can play that game. To put it simply, I was a little idiot as a kid. I used to steal from stores and family, swear and throw things at random people walking down the street. I didn't give a damn about anyone but my friends. When I was 16, my parents finally had enough, and despite all my tantrums and screaming and even some physical violence against my dad, they decided to put me in a school for troubled youth. I call it a school, but what it really was a military institution that taught discipline in the most brutally effective ways, while throwing in some literacy and numeracy classes along the way. This school changed me. The men who ran this camp broke me down. No phone calls, no visits home, no access to the outside world. For 1 whole year, I had this camp and these counselors, these real-life hard men teach me just how much of a retard I really was. When I returned home, I was a somewhat civilized young man, ready to take on my last year of high school. I was nervous to go back, since I had adapted to the disciplinary school lifestyle, but I was also excited. I missed my friends, and hoped they would just accept me back despite the fact that I hadn't spoken to any of them in over a year. To my relief, I was accepted back with open arms. My 3 good friends were ecstatic to see me. Over the next few weeks I settled down. I didn't spend a lot of time with them outside of school. My parents were kind of testing how much I'd matured since returning, and were setting boundaries on when I could go out, how long I could stay out and where I could go. I was determined to prove to them I wasn't the same mistake that had ruined their lives all those years, so I followed their rules, and so only really talked to my friends during school. All of this is relevant, because of what happened next. I had joined the school football team all 3 friends were a part of, and one evening after practice, all my teammates were in the gym, sweaty and dirty but pleased with ourselves. I was laughing and chatting with my 3 best friends so much I didn't really notice that we were the last left in the gym. But that's when the conversation started turning bad. One of my friends, Joe, started telling me about a college party they were all planning on going to, and how they'd been crashing college parties for a few months now, since it was easy access to girls and booze. I was hesitant about it because I didn't think my mom and dad would agree to let me go, but then Joe started talking about this girl he was planning on inviting. A girl who went to the same school as us but not one I thought Joe had any real relationship with. He started to tell both my other friends, and me, that he'd been trying to get her into bed for a while and she kept making excuses, so he planned on taking her to the party and finally smashing. When I asked him, in a joking way, "What makes you so sure she won't reject you again?" He looked me dead in the eye and said as casually as you please, the most chilling sentence I have ever heard in my entire life. "I'm just gonna slip something in her drink. It'll loosen her up, no problem." At first I just kind of awkwardly laughed, thinking it was some messed up joke, but they weren't laughing with me. When I asked him if he was serious, he told me he was sick of her BS games and knew she was just stringing him along, and that the pills would just make things easier. I could not believe my ears. I spent the whole night convincing myself my friends were just messing around. A few more days pass and the locker room conversation is all but forgotten, though they hadn't shut up about the party, and kept insisting that I just sneak out and join them. I got called a wuss repeatedly for telling them I wasn't going because of my parents, but again, I just brushed it off. Then things got real. During yet another post-practice locker room session, Joe does something I never would have expected in 1,000 years. All 3 of them have been talking about the party this whole time. Then Joe starts rummaging through his gym bag. He tells us all to look at this and tosses my other friend a small bag of little pink pills. Immediately, I feel the blood drain from my face. It's really hard to describe what I was feeling when Joe started going into detail about how he planned on inviting the girl to the party, slipping something into her drink and making use of one of the frat boys' bedrooms for a few hours. I was sick. I literally could have hurled everything from my stomach all over the floor as I listened to them. I couldn't take it. I decided I'd sort it out all on my own. So the next time I saw Joe, I went up to him and told him not to do what he had planned. Told him it was stupid and dangerous and would ruin both his life and the life of the girl. He didn't even blink. He got right in my face and told me that the school I got sent to had turned me into a wuss. That he hated how much I'd changed and had been trying to change me back with our other 2 friends. He even told me how they'd been talking about me behind my back, and how they'd planned to give me a turn on the girl once Joe was done with her, just to show me what I was missing out on. I punched him. We fought, and we both got sent home on suspension for fighting. I could not believe it. I was sickened to my core. And I was done with him. My parents were disappointed I had gotten suspended so shortly after coming home, but I just sat quietly while my mom cried and my dad screamed at me. I know now that I should have told him, but after what Joe said to me, I had this insane notion in my head that I was going to get him back all on my own. And I did. After a weekend of being grounded, I went back to school, and the first thing I did was seek out Joe. He was about as bashed up as I was. Our other friends were standing with him, and they all glared at me as I approached them. Then I did something that made me feel sick. I apologized to him. I told him I was sorry I hit him, and that he was right, I had changed, and I hated what that school had done to me, and I wanted to go back to being the old me again, and surprisingly, they all bought it. We even hugged it out. I put the cherry on top when I told them I'd be coming to the party. Now, for my plan. First, I started recording them whenever we were alone together. I wanted to get everything they said about the party and the girl they were planning on victimizing on tape. I knew I needed some kind of proof, or it would just be my word against theirs. And after a few days, I had gotten more than enough. But I wasn't done. The next thing I did was track down the girl, take her aside, and tell her everything. She was pissed and scared, but I begged her not to go to the police or tell anyone. I had a plan. A crazy, stupid plan to teach them all a lesson. So I told her to tell Joe that she was going to meet him at the party, but to just stay home. Later that day, Joe started bragging about how the girl had accepted his invitation and everything was going to plan. And I sat there, phone half out of my pocket, recording everything. The night of the party finally rolls around, and I sneak out, because, I was grounded. It was a strange moment of realization to come to in the middle of a crowded frat house surrounded by drunk idiots, but you take what life throws at you. The night goes on, and Joe is getting steadily more frustrated that the girl he invited hadn't shown up. I kept an eye on all of them, watching as they drank and drank while I stayed as level-headed as possible with some water and a beer can. When midnight came, all three of them were plastered. By this time the crowd was dying down, and a few people who couldn't hold their liquor were already passed out around the house. Now was my time to shine. While all three of them were occupied with a drinking game, I hunted in Joe's bag and found the bag of little pink pills. Here's where I did something I'm not particularly proud of, but I'll tell you anyway. I slipped one pill into 3 beers each and handed them to my friends, and then waited. It didn't take long before all three were passed out on the floor, along with quite a few other party guests. I then took out a black permanent marker pen from my bag and wrote the R word on all three of their foreheads, took pictures and immediately uploaded them to our school's Facebook page, so everyone who attended our school would see. Next came the recordings. When I got home, I got a scolding from my parents for sneaking out, but they stopped when I finally told them what had been happening. They were both shocked, and a little disbelieving, but when I played them both the recordings I'd saved on my phone, they were just as sickened as I was. I was silent in the car as my dad drove me to the police station. My phone had already blown up with other students commenting on the pictures, and while a lot just laughed at them, many were questioning if there was any truth to it. It was what I wanted. The recordings were enough to get them all on charges of planning to commit a crime. Since the girl Joe had been planning on victimizing had been named, her parents were understandably furious, and demanded all three of my ex-friends be arrested. I was charged for my use of an illegal substance, since I admitted to using the pills on my 3 ex-friends, and also for battery, since the permanent marker was seen as a form of assault, but luckily I never got jail time. I did get a boatload of community service though. All three of them were tried as adults in a case of attempted R, but only Joe got actual jail time, since he was the one who'd gotten the pills and was the only one who admitted to wanting to use them. The other two only got probation and community service for being accessories but were completely shunned in our town. No one ever let them forget.